Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
So, O'Connor and Company, thanks for tuning in on a busy Wednesday morning as we continue to see unrest and violence across this country now. They've globalized the Intifada, I guess, replicating what we've seen in Los Angeles for several days now in major cities across the nation. Coming up at 8:05, Joe Concha on the media's hand in all of this, and on now the firing of Terry Moran of ABC News. And then at 8:35, old friend of the program, Roma Daravi. She's the spokesperson for the Kennedy Center. Les Miserables opening tonight. Huge night for the Trump administration and for the city and for the arts. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Let's walk down memory lane, shall we? Do you remember this video? This is Nancy Pelosi being whisked away from the Capitol. The video is taken by her own daughter. She's in a vehicle leaving the Capitol on January 6th.
Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
No, there's not a question of how they had, but they don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
All right, now, you'll remember, that's Nancy Pelosi asking why the National Guard wasn't there on January 6th, and then saying, as you just heard, I take full responsibility for them not being there. That's curious because yesterday, as questions arose about the showdown in California and President Trump's deployment of the National Guard specifically to protect federal buildings and of federal law enforcement agents who were under assault, there was some question as to whether the president was acting rashly, shouldn't have called the National Guard, and people were drawing comparisons to January 6th and the National Guard. Fast forward to yesterday afternoon, Democrats on Capitol Hill, they bring out Nancy Pelosi, and she says this.
On January 6th, with violence against the Constitution, against the Congress, and against the United States Capitol, we begged the President of the United States to send in the National Guard. He would not do it. Not only would he not do it, when law enforcement people were being harmed, some later died, he would not send it in when an instigation that an insurrection that he incited was causing damage to those assigned to protect the Capitol and the Constitution that day, to accept the results of the Electoral College.
All right, there's a lot to unpack there, but thankfully we don't have to do it alone. We have someone who actually has firsthand knowledge of the events of January 6th and the days leading up to it with regard to the police, the riot, and the National Guard. He is the former chief of the Capitol Police, Stephen Sund, and he joins us now. Chief Sund, thanks for waking up this morning for us. Good to talk with you.
My pleasure, Julie and Larry. It's always great being with you, too.
When you heard Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi deliver those remarks yesterday, I wonder what went through your mind, because I think you have a different memory of the situation.
Absolutely have a different memory. You know, when I sit down and I watch the video and you hear about the violence that's now, it's terrible in California, but it's now hitting other cities, and I'm really worried about this weekend. And you have her going on TV and saying this. At first, I thought this is laughable what she's saying, but it's way too serious for that. You know, these politicians need to start speaking the truth. The fact is, and it's interesting if you go back. You know, I don't post a lot on Twitter or X, but I did yesterday when I saw that. I posted. It's time to get the facts out. The post that I put out actually on the January 6th. There's a couple things we'll unpack here, but January 6th, I requested the National Guard 11 times through her sergeant at arms, which I'm required to by federal law. People don't realize that. They've now changed the law, but I'm required to. So I went ahead and posted the facts. That's gotten 2.3 million views. That still shows that people are sick and tired of politicians coming out there and trying to spew stuff that they think people are just going to believe. It's not the truth. The truth is, January 3rd, I requested National Guard multiple times. I was denied multiple times. All I wanted was National Guard to help secure my perimeter. And then on January 6th, while the very police officers she's talking about are under attack, for 71 minutes, I repeatedly kept calling the Sergeant at Arms, begging for them to give me approval to bring in National Guard, and they wouldn't. Thank gosh I had all those police agencies on my phone and just started calling every police chief I knew and asking for help.
Yeah. Chief Sund, first of all, let me thank you for that, and thank you for clearing the record, because your story, shockingly, doesn't get out very much. You were the chief of police for the Capitol Police on January 6th, and somehow you're not the top of the list to be on to talk about this and bring the facts out. A couple of things. Number one, you said you started your request for the National Guard on January 3rd, so you were anticipating a large turnout at the Capitol. You make those requests as chief of police for the Capitol Police through the House of Representatives and through the Speaker's office. Why didn't you call the president? The narrative out here is that the president's in charge of the National Guard in Washington, D.C., and if you wanted the National Guard, you should have called the president.
Well, in Washington, D.C., and I know my National Guard regulations, the mayor's in charge. But for me, it's unique. People need to realize this. Up on Capitol Hill, it's unique. And I'm the only chief that had this law. It's 2 U.S. 1970. They've since realized the flaws in the law and changed it a year later. But needless to say, on January 6th, I was impacted by it. So my chain of command goes right to the Sergeant Arms, and anybody can look it up. Just make sure you look at the original one. It has to be in consultation with leadership. So I go to the Sergeant Arms. They're supposed to take it up to leadership, and they wouldn't even do that.
Okay.
Well, I don't even know what communication they may have had with Pelosi, but the concern specifically Paul Irving had, who is Speaker Pelosi's Sergeant Arms, was the optics of National Guard on Capitol Hill.
All right. So leading up to January 6th, I've heard you say this before on this program, that you were told, no, we don't want the National Guard because of optics. They didn't want it to look bad on camera. And, of course, we see what they did get on camera on January 6th. All right. Question number two. On the day of, you say you made 11 requests. When they responded to your requests, did they ever tell you, well, we'd love to do that for you, Chief, but President Trump has said no, he won't deploy the National Guard?
Not once. Not once did it come down to that. I was just trying to get it through my chain of command, to get it over there. So at 12:53, we came under attack on the West Front. 12:55, I called D.C. Police for help. 12:58, I made my first call to Paul Irving, and he said he's going to run it up the chain. That's his chain of command up to Speaker Pelosi. There was 10 more calls before I finally got approval at 2:09 p.m. Think about that. While that attack was going on, that's 2 minutes before the first window at the Capitol was broken.
Chief Sund, what happened afterwards? You were made kind of a scapegoat, and you've quietly been pushing back for years on this narrative, which we just saw yesterday, in light of a video by Pelosi's own daughter, which contradicts what she said at that podium yesterday. But I'm interested in what happened to you afterwards. Again, you were made a scapegoat. Can you explain that?
Absolutely, Julie. Thank you for asking that as well. So after January 6th, she goes on national TV. She says, what happened on January 6th is a failure of leadership at the top, called me out by name, and demanded my resignation. After being up for 36 hours, I consulted with a couple of people. I said, you know what, I'll go ahead and submit my resignation. And then when I started looking into everything and putting all the facts together of everything that had occurred in an after action, which people can read, I'm now realizing that I absolutely shouldn't have been fired. I love that agency. I love the men and women of that agency. I think I was probably one of the better leaders. To be forced out like that, and to be stripped of my retirement, be stripped of compensation. So now I'm working with Barry Loudermilk, December 17th, 2024. People may not realize that the subcommittee submitted one of their final reports to Congress, and on the front page exonerated me by name. Mm-hmm. I've been working with Barry Loudermilk to regain my reputation and have them look at the retirement benefits and benefits that were stripped from me by her going on national TV and calling for my resignation. I was the one that tried to get National Guard in advance, tried to get National Guard on January 6th, and was repeatedly denied, and I was the one that had to pay the price.
And I just want to be really clear here. You were stripped of your retirement.
Yeah, I was actually just a few months away from being able to retire, and wasn't allowed to retire. I was forced out. Yeah. Whereas other people in the agency that played a role in the poor intelligence now have other jobs and were able to retire early. So it's kind of interesting, but there's a whole story. It's
interesting is one word for it. Unjust is another. I mean, you were made a scapegoat, but more accurately, Nancy Pelosi made you the scapegoat, I think is the better way to phrase it. One last question. I just want to go back because you mentioned that you started your request for National Guard on January 3rd. I don't think I've ever asked you this question in the few times that I've been able to interview you. Kash Patel was the chief of staff of the Pentagon that day. He talks about a meeting. He said this under oath to the committee, the January 6th committee, that there was a meeting of President Trump, the Secretary of Defense, and President Trump several days before January 6th pre-authorized the use of National Guard should the mayor or the speaker request it. Do you have independent knowledge of that? Did you know ahead of time leading up to January 6th, or had you heard that the president had pre-authorized the use of the National Guard?
So the president pre-authorizing it, what I don't have specific knowledge of that, but I do have knowledge of, and it speaks to that, is there's a program manager over at the Pentagon. Her name is Carol Corbin. She's activated the National Guard, worked with D.C. Police and other agencies to help fill their resource needs for National Guard. She had reached out to somebody at the Capitol Police on January 3rd, the same day that I went to the Sergeant at Arms, saying, are you guys going to be requesting National Guard? Meaning they're leaning forward. So that supports what the saying.
Okay.
That they were, and we had to say no because that had been denied by the Sergeant at Arms
All right.
to make that request.
That's critical, I think, that on January 3rd, you were privy to the Pentagon proactively reaching out, and you can connect those dots, or I would connect those dots, to Kash Patel's testimony, who's now the FBI director, that President Trump pre-authorized and told the Pentagon that he authorizes the use of the National Guard. Once again, Nancy Pelosi rewriting history yesterday, the media taking it without any scrutiny, without any challenge, without any question. This is the man who knows the truth. He was there that day, former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund. Thank you, sir. Thanks for clearing this up.
Thank you.
I appreciate talking to you. Take care.
That gets picked up by other news agencies out there. Cable news should actually have that as part of the narrative today. I doubt they will, but that's why you listen to this station every morning.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
What was it? Dr. Kubler-Ross was very famous in the 70s when she came up with the stages of grief, right? Anger, denial, bargaining, acceptance. Anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Those were the 5 stages of grief. Remember that? Kubler-Ross.
Yes, I do, of course.
With a hyphen. Kubler-Ross with a hyphen. Anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And you see the left going through a lot of that, their own anger, denial, bargaining, depression. They're not really hitting acceptance with regard to the election or Trump or conservative values and the enforcement of law. No. But you also saw something else progress over the last several days with regard to the L.A. riots, and that was, first, they're peaceful. So this is like their version of anger, denial, bargaining, depression, acceptance. The stages. Number 1, peaceful. Number 2, mostly peaceful. Number 3, sure, violent, but Trump's fault. And number 4, January 6th, which I hard to connect those dots, but as you just heard from Chief Sund, that was Nancy Pelosi there yesterday sort of waving the banner of January 6th and the National Guard. If you understand and follow the Nancy Pelosi Democrat logic here, echoed and repeated in the mainstream media, Donald Trump was responsible for January 6th because he did not call in the National Guard, and Donald Trump is responsible for the L.A. riots because he did call in the National Guard.
I know. It's
you figure that out, and you are a card-carrying liberal.
It's called schizophrenia, Larry.
Well, Nancy wasn't done. She also had this to say about her sweet home state of California, cut 11.
And I say this as a former party chair, when there is a large gathering of people, the anarchists see it as an opportunity and they move in. So always have to be careful whether you see a burned car, a broken window, or whatever it is. It may be the exuberance of the moment, but it may be the anarchist setting in. I heard one of the former police chiefs of Los Angeles speak about this on Sunday.
The exuberance of the moment.
How many drinks has she had?
I don't know.
It's the exuberance.
But you know what? There is one takeaway from there. I hope you caught it. She's talking about the anarchists. This would be Antifa. Mm-hmm. Unlike our former FBI director, Christopher Wray, who would deny their even existence, let alone organization, even Nancy Pelosi acknowledges that there is an organized anarchist movement in this country known as Antifa. And, yes, they do seize control of these riots, if not completely coordinate them from the ground up.
Opportunistic. Yes, absolutely.
At the very least. It's 7:22.
Coming up, we have an update on the L.A. riots. Nancy Pelosi says, people are just getting a little overly excited. Meanwhile, Trump is wasting no time. He's announced that the Department of Justice is investigating who financed these riots. And Pete Hegseth, he's on fire on Capitol Hill. We'll have it all for you. Keep it here at 7:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:37. It's O'Connor and Company here on this Wednesday in your nation's capital, 11th day of June. We're just a few days out from the big parade celebrating the 250th birthday of the Army and our military writ large. Later in this program, we're going to talk to Joe Concha at 8:05 about the dumping, the unceremonious firing, the canning. We're not supposed to celebrate anyone in the media losing their job because they're but for the grace of God. But you know what? I'm okay with Terry Moran getting fired. We'll talk about that. And then at 8:35, Roma Daravi, she's the spokesperson for the Kennedy Center, where tonight we'll have the big red carpet opening of Les Miserables. POTUS will be there. FLOTUS will be there. VPOTUS will be there. SFLOTUS. Is it SFLOTUS? Is that what they call the second? SLOTUS.
Let's go with SLOTUS.
SLOTUS.
Second
yeah.
lady. Yeah.
They'll all be there.
You sounded Czech for a second there.
Yeah. That's Julie Gunlock. She's the SLOTUS of O'Connor and Company.
Second lady.
Slow talk.
What? Oh, it's always Heather. That's right. I forgot.
Yeah, exactly.
Always.
Nobody puts Heather in a corner.
I know.
Let's get an update on what's going on in Los Angeles and the state of California. First, a bit of a dust-up between Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump. Gavin Newsom is bound and determined to make this about Donald Trump, which is kind of funny because, it's that meme from Mad Men, right? Trump's like, I don't even think about you. It's like, what?
Exactly.
This is about law and order. It's about enforcing the law. So he was asked at an Oval Office appearance by one of the reporters there, when was the last time you talked to Gavin Newsom? And Trump says yesterday, I think he said, is it yesterday? A day ago is what he said. I called to tell him to do a better job because he's doing a bad job. Gavin Newsom responded on social media because he's got nothing to do with his days right now. He's just, scrolling X. And he replied and said, there was no call, not even a voicemail. Americans should be alarmed that a president deploying Marines onto our streets doesn't even know who he's talking to. Okay, well, the Trump administration responded rapidly, as rapid responders do, and he even texted John Roberts live on the air on Fox News to respond. Here's what it sounded like, cut 13.
Between Gavin Newsom and President Trump. Gavin Newsom, after President Trump said in the noon hour in the Oval Office that he called him yesterday or the other day, Gavin Newsom tweeted the following. He said, quote, there was no call, not even a voicemail. Americans should be alarmed that a president deploying Marines on our streets doesn't even know who he's talking to. Well, President Trump contacted me from Air Force One on his way to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where he'll be in just a little while. He said the first call to Gavin Newsom was not picked up. The second call Gavin picked up. We spoke for 16 minutes. I told him to essentially, quote, and this is quoting the president, get his in gear and stop the riots, which were out of control more than anything else. This shows what a liar he is. Said I never called. So here is the evidence. And here is the call log that the president sent me from his phone. He gave him a screenshot of the call log. This was June the 7th. Now, granted, this was on Saturday. But look, there's 1:22 o'clock in the morning, which would have been 10 o'clock at night, 10:22 at night, California time. There was an outgoing call for 4 seconds, and then there was an outgoing call for 16 minutes.
All right, there you get the picture. So again, Gavin Newsom's lying. Then Gavin Newsom. So again, understand the messaging here, because they've been saying, "Oh, this is isolated. It's only a couple of blocks. It's not that big a deal." And if that's the case, even though we see the looting, we see the videos, we see the mayhem, and we heard the police chief of Los Angeles say it's out of control. We can't do this by ourselves. So he's asking for help. But if it's the case that it's not that big a deal, why would the governor of California decide to do a statewide address and cosplay as the president of the United States with the flags behind him? and address the people of California. I mean, if it's not a crisis, why are you making a speech to the people of California?
Could it be that he is running for president?
Yeah,
that's what it is.
He's
Look
trying
at
to
him
rise
there
to
with
this
his
occasion.
suit.
Yeah,
he's got the flags behind him. He looks very serious. His
Wait,
gel, the hair gel's great.
Julie, we can't just paint the picture because this is radio. So let's go to
Right.
the audio. Let's listen to the governor's speech as it was delivered live to the people of California. Yeah. Actually, we didn't even hear the crickets. It was literally silent. They couldn't get the audio to work on their own speech. I mean, this is his wife is a film producer, for God's sake, and film director. This is California. You would think a professional podcaster like Gavin Newsom would have a working microphone.
True, you would think. But I will say about his wife, she was spotted. You know where she was spotted yesterday? I'm not kidding you.
French Laundry.
She was in Beverly Hills shopping with her bodyguards.
Sure, of course, she needs security.
So she should have been doing his sound.
Not safe out there. No.
Right.
Yeah. They claimed they had technical difficulties,
Sure.
and they put out the speech later, but he can't manage the state. He can't manage delivering a speech properly. Incredibly embarrassing, and exactly what you should expect from the cosplaying Lizard King governor. The bottom line on all of this is the speech. I'll sum it up for you. This is all Trump's fault. And when he did beg the people of California to be peaceful and not loot and not destroy things and not burn things down, he did it not because, we're a nation of laws, not because you're harming people, not
Right.
because this is wrong. No. The reason that he didn't want them to be violent is because it helps Trump. Don't play into his game. Don't give him fuel for his fire. This guy is, he is absolutely narcissistic, grade A psychopath, this guy. And he wants to be president.
Wednesday on the Derek Hunter Show, there's a big parade coming up this weekend to celebrate America, and liberals hate the idea. We'll talk about it. 3 o'clock on WMAL.
A little bit more on the situation in Los Angeles. It's not just Los Angeles, though. They have globalized the intifada, as it were, as we saw insurrections all across the country in major cities. And as you just heard from Derek Hunter, no doubt we'll see it here in Washington, D.C. this Saturday. President Trump, for his part, he spoke to soldiers at Fort Bragg yesterday, the recently restored name, Fort Bragg. He mentioned that in a bit. I'll get to it. But first, he did focus on the riots and the use of the military there. Here's cut 15.
And before going further, I want to say a few words about the situation in Los Angeles, California. Have you heard of the place? Where I've deployed thousands of National Guard troops and hundreds of Marines to protect federal law enforcement from the attacks of a vicious and violent mob. And some of the radical left, they say, oh, that's not nice. Well, if we didn't do it, there wouldn't be a Los Angeles. It would be burning today, just like the houses were burning a number of months ago. Generations of Army heroes did not shed their blood on distant shores only to watch our country be destroyed by invasion and third world lawlessness here at home, like is happening in California. As Commander-in-Chief, I will not let that happen. It's never going to happen.
There was more here about California, and he did not pull any punches because, well, he's Donald Trump. Listen.
What you're witnessing in California is a full-blown assault on peace, on public order, and on national sovereignty carried out by rioters bearing foreign flags with the aim of continuing a foreign invasion of our country. We're not going to let that happen. Remember, millions of people were allowed to come into our country totally unchecked and unvetted by stupid people or radical left people or sick people. But regardless, open border policy, the dumbest policy yet. I would say even dumber than men playing in women's sports, transgender for everyone. Even dumber than that.
He didn't. He hit it all when talking, and the soldiers seemed to enjoy it, Julie. Here's a little bit more. Cut 17, talking about the rioters themselves, the ones especially carrying flags of foreign nations. Cut 17.
These are animals, but they proudly carry the flags of other countries, but they don't carry the American flag. They only burn it. Did you see a lot of the flags being burned? They weren't being burned by people from our country or from people that love our country. People that burn the American flag should go to jail for 1 year. That's what they should be doing. 1 year. And we'll see if we can get that done. We're going to try and get that done. We're working with some of your senators. I know Senator Josh Hawley is very much involved, and I know the two senators from here. I think are you guys in favor of it? Boy, would this be a bad time for them to say no.
There's more on this speech at Fort Bragg. We can get into it a little bit later. Something tells me Democrats and the entire staff
Cato.
at CNN and Cato did not like what they heard. It's 7:52.